Welcome back to the Pulpit and Porch. If you're a regular listener, you might notice today's episode sounds a little different. It's just me here on the porch. No Robert today. And honestly, that maybe feels kind of fitting for where we are in the season. Sometimes life doesn't go exactly as planned, and maybe that's the point. We're 2 days from Christmas. 2 days. And if you're anything like most people I know, or most people that I talk to this time of year, this is usually the point when the questions start creeping in. You start noticing the little disconnects, the things that feel off. Why don't I feel more excited? Why does this feel heavier than it used to? Why am I exhausted instead of joyful? Why does Christmas feel different this year? Maybe the biggest question of all, the one that keeps tugging at your heart, is this: is something wrong with me? I want to say this clearly, and I want you to hear it slowly. If Christmas doesn't feel the way you think it's supposed to feel this year, you're not broken. You're not faithless. You're not doing Christmas wrong. In fact, you might actually be closer to the heart of Christmas than you realize. Let me explain. Because here's something that we don't talk about enough. The first Christmas didn't feel merry either. It didn't feel calm. It didn't feel magical. It didn't feel tidy or well-planned or Instagram ready. Think about it. Mary is traveling while heavily pregnant, going on foot over hundreds of miles to get to a census that she didn't ask for. She's scared, she's tired, she's probably wondering if she's doing the right thing. Joseph, he's wrestling with questions about responsibility, shame, doubt. The shepherds, they're cold, tired, and lonely. You've got Rome's empire, taxes, oppression, displacement. It seems hardly like a serene backdrop. Christmas didn't arrive in a quiet, peaceful, perfect setting. It arrived in confusion. It arrived in inconvenience. It arrived in risk. It arrived in disruption. And yet, that's the moment that God chose to step in. And that's when he chose to show up. So today, I want to do something different. I want to just sit with you for a while. No rush, no checklists, no pressure to feel any certain way. I just want to talk with you about what Christmas really is and what it might mean when it doesn't feel the way that you expected it to. So pull up a chair. You're welcome here. Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. I'm Tony Marr, and with me as always is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everybody, we are so glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and have real conversations about life, faith, growth, and maybe even a little sports and pop culture.
If you're looking for a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah, around here, it's more about those honest, heart-to-heart conversations, like the one you'd have on a front porch with good friends. Sometimes we stay on track, sometimes we take the scenic route.
And honestly, that's half the fun, isn't it? We dig into the highs, the lows, and all the in-betweens of living out your faith in real life. Along the way, we may pull up a few extra chairs and invite some friends onto the porch to share stories and ideas that just may change the way that you see things.
So whether you're chasing your purpose, building your faith, or just trying to live a little more fully, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and join us. This is the Pulpit and Porch. We got a seat waiting for you.
Well, welcome into the Pulpit and Porch. I am your solo host today, Tony Marr, and my co-host, Robert, was not feeling so well. We were supposed to record this morning, and we had our episode all ready to go, and I know that it was an episode that a lot of you were looking forward to. It was kind of a part 2 of a little series that we were doing on Christmas movies, and this week was going to be Christmas TV specials, and maybe we'll get that in, and it'll come to you after the week after Christmas, because let's be honest, the Christmas season continues on until January 1st, and if your family's anything like mine, we keep watching Christmas specials and Christmas movies the week between Christmas and New Year's. So hopefully Robert will get to feeling better and we'll be able to get that episode recorded for you and put out sometime next week. But we had to call an audible. And we didn't have anything prepared for an audible like this. And so I'm going to take just a few minutes and talk through some things with you that have been heavy on my heart recently, some ideas that have floated through my head over the course of the last couple of days and weeks especially. And I want to start by just pausing for a moment. I want you to picture something with me. I want you to imagine a winter night a long time ago. Everything quiet except for the stars above. Except that it's not really quiet. There's the sound of animals in the barn. There's the creak of wood. There's the whisper of wind. And in the midst of all of that, a baby is born. Not in a palace, not in a perfectly decorated nursery, but in the most ordinary and unlikely of places. God wrapped himself in skin and stepped into the chaos of human life. And here's the thing. That same God steps into the chaos of your life today, into your stress, your exhaustion, your grief, your worry. He doesn't wait until the timing's perfect. He doesn't wait until you feel ready. He doesn't wait until you've got it all together. He comes in the middle of it right there. I remember Christmas a few years back. After a particularly brutal autumn, life just felt heavy. I was the lead pastor at a church, and I had way too many responsibilities, too many meetings, too many shoulds piled on top of each other. And I remember walking into the church auditorium for the first Christmas service of a Christmas series that year. I just wasn't feeling it. I couldn't feel the music. I couldn't feel the decorations. I couldn't feel the magic. I was just tired. And I thought maybe Christmas was passing me by that year. And then I heard the words, "Fear not." Simple, small, yet entirely unexpected. And for the first time that season, I realized that I didn't have to manufacture joy. I didn't have to decorate my emotions or perfect my feelings. God was already in the room. God was already near. And that changed everything. I think that's what I want us to sit with today. The first Christmas didn't feel like the Christmas cards that we hang on the wall. It didn't feel like the cheerful movies that we binge in December. It didn't feel like a perfect Hallmark scene. And yet that's the Christmas that changed the world. So if your Christmas feels heavy, if it feels small, if it feels quiet, or if it doesn't feel like Christmas at all, don't panic. Don't try to force something. Don't believe the lie that your feelings are a reflection of your faith. This is exactly the moment where God might be doing the most significant work in your life. And that's kind of beautiful, isn't it? Because it tells us something profound about God. God isn't intimidated by our mess. God isn't frightened by our chaos. God doesn't need a pristine backdrop to do extraordinary things. He doesn't measure our worth by the number of lights that we have on the tree or the amount of money that we spent on gifts this year. God's presence is the gift, always has been, and always will be. So I want you to imagine that first Christmas scene again. But this time, put yourself in it. You're not Mary, you're not Joseph, you're not the shepherds, you're just you. And God shows up anyway. He chooses you. He invites you anyway. And that invitation doesn't come with a to-do list or a burden. It comes with an open hand and a promise of I am here, I am near, I am with you. Oh, and fear not. You're not too tired. You're not too busy. You're not too anything. God is already here, and he's waiting. So let's start with something I think all of us wrestle with, whether we realize it or not. The myth of the perfect Christmas. Somewhere along the way, we've absorbed this idea that Christmas is supposed to feel a certain way. And I don't mean just culturally. I mean deep in our bones, socially, emotionally, even spiritually. It's supposed to be warm. It's supposed to be cozy. It's supposed to be cheerful, nostalgic, in a very Hallmark-approved sense of the word. Maybe a little snow, maybe a fireplace, carols in the background, cinnamon in the air, everyone smiling, hugging, loving, laughing, gifts perfectly wrapped, cookies perfectly baked, cards perfectly sent. And here's the thing. If it doesn't feel that way, many of us immediately assume that we've missed something, that we've failed, that we've messed up, that we've not done Christmas right. And I want to pause right there because I want you to hear me. That is a lie. That pressure, that expectation, it isn't from God. It's from the world around us, from decades of movies, marketing, social media, and cultural storytelling. And the danger is if we buy into it too deeply, we can end up missing the real Christmas entirely. Because the truth is, if we actually slow down and look at the biblical story, really look at it, it doesn't match our expectations at all. Not even close. Think about Mary for a minute. She isn't calm. She's not sitting in a cozy room sipping tea with a fire crackling in the background. She's terrified. She's confused. She's probably asking herself, how is this possible? How will I even survive this journey? What are people going to think? And what about Joseph? He isn't joyful. He's wrestling with doubt. He's wrestling with shame, responsibility that he didn't ask for. He's trying to make sense of a situation that he can't control in a world where failing to follow the rules could cost him everything. What about the shepherds? They're not cozy. They're working the night shift, forgotten, overlooked, doing the work that no one else wants to do. They're the outcasts from society, the lowest of the low. They're dirty, they're tired, they're alone in the fields. Until an angel shows up and everything changes in a moment of divine interruption. And the world that Jesus entered into, it definitely wasn't peaceful. It was oppressive, violent, unjust. Rome ruled with fear. People were overtaxed. Families were displaced. A census uprooted their homes. And in the midst of all that, God chooses this exact world to step into. That's not what we picture when we think Christmas. But that's exactly what Christmas looked like. So why does that matter for us today? It matters because it tells us something about the heart of God. God didn't wait for the world to calm down before sending his son. He didn't wait for Mary to be ready, Joseph to be perfectly sure, the shepherds to have cleaner clothes. God entered into the noise. He entered into the mess. He entered our human reality at the most inconvenient, chaotic, and difficult moment imaginable. And I think that's a radical invitation for us today. Because when we compare our real life Christmas to the manufactured images on TV and the movies or on Pinterest, it's easy to feel like we can fall short. But maybe, just maybe, those moments when Christmas feels messy, heavy, or chaotic are actually the moments as closest to what it's always been. I remember a few years ago for Christmas, we had big plans. It was one of our first Christmases as a family. And we were doing Christmas with my wife's family, and my son was sick. We couldn't make it. We had to make a choice that we either go be miserable and risk infecting the whole family, or I stayed home with my son. And so while all the rest of my family was off celebrating Christmas, me and my son were curled up watching Christmas movies, putting rags on his head to try to get down a fever. I can remember sitting there thinking, well, I guess this is Christmas this year. Completely passed me by. But then I looked and saw my son laying next to me asleep. Had Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer playing on the TV in front of me. And I remembered the story of Mary and Joseph, of the shepherds, of a world that was far from perfect when Jesus arrived. And in that moment, something shifted. I realized that Christmas wasn't about my perfection. It wasn't about the flawless decorations. It wasn't about the Pinterest-worthy meals or the perfectly wrapped presents. It was about, well, presence. The presence of God. The presence of love. The presence of grace, the presence of peace. This pressure to make Christmas feel a certain way isn't just tiring, it's distracting. It keeps us from seeing what God is really doing, because the first Christmas didn't happen in a quiet, calm, picture-perfect world. It happened in a noisy, messy, complicated, ordinary human world, and God stepped into it anyway. And here's the kicker. He still does. Maybe your house is chaotic this year. Maybe the kids are louder than usual. Maybe your spouse isn't feeling Christmas either. Maybe you're grieving someone that you lost. Maybe your calendar is overstuffed. Maybe your patience is thin. Your heart feels heavy. And that's exactly where Christmas wants to meet you. Not in the perfect light, not in the perfect setting, not in a Hallmark movie moment, but in the reality of life. Think about that for a moment. God chose to enter our world, not when everything was tidy and neat, but in the middle of the mess. And that tells us something really important. He doesn't need perfection. He doesn't require ideal conditions. He simply asks us to be present, to open our hearts, to recognize him in the midst of our lives. And I want to challenge a myth right here. The myth that Christmas has to feel perfect or it's not real. The myth that joy must look a certain way to be valid. That myth is cultural. It's not biblical. The Bible doesn't set up this expectation of Instagram-ready emotions. It sets up real people, real lives, and a God who steps into them anyway. So if Christmas feels heavy or lonely or chaotic, let that be your invitation to pause. Let it be a reminder that God is showing up in unexpected ways, in unexpected places, and at unexpected times. I want you to imagine a picture really quick. Imagine Christmas morning. Not as a perfect movie scene, but as it really might look for most people. A messy living room, wrapping paper everywhere, kids fighting over toys, coffee spilled, dog barking, most of us still in our pajamas. And then imagine God walking in, not metaphorically, not as an abstract idea, but as a presence that you can notice. An interruption in the midst of the chaos, a whisper of hope in the noise. That's Christmas. That's where the real joy is found. And here's the thing. That joy isn't dependent on circumstances. It doesn't wait for the tree to be perfect, for the meal to be flawless, or the gifts to be exactly right. It doesn't wait for you to feel a certain way. Joy shows up because God shows up. Always. Faithfulness isn't about perfection. It's about presence. The thing about that Christmas is that everything was messed up. Christmas Day, my family was supposed to come over to our house. My mom, my dad, my brother and his family, everybody was supposed to come. But because my son was sick, they all decided not to. Christmas didn't turn out the way that we thought that it was supposed to be. I remember another year, just a few years ago, when we had a major snowstorm and the weather came in brutally cold. We froze our pipes. We did everything that we were supposed to do, but we have well water here at our house, and our well pump actually froze up. So for 2 days before Christmas, up through 2 days after Christmas, we didn't have any water in our home. It was total chaos. We were brushing our teeth and washing our faces out of jugged water. But we lit a few candles. We gathered the kids in the living room. We read the Christmas story from Luke. It wasn't perfect. In fact, by all cultural standards, it was a complete disaster. Most of us hadn't showered in days. We were snowed in, so we couldn't even get out to get supplies. But that night, I felt Christmas more deeply than ever before. Not because of anything that I did, but because in the middle of our imperfection, we experienced presence. Real, tangible, holy presence. And that's the invitation for you today. Let go of the myth. Let go of the expectation that Christmas must feel a certain way. Let go of the lie that if it's not perfect, it's not holy. Step into the season with open eyes and open hearts, trusting that God shows up in the mess, in the noise, in the chaos, in the ordinary. Christmas isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about God stepping into our ordinary, messy, complicated lives, and maybe, just maybe, the moments when Christmas feels the least like Christmas are the moments when it's actually closest to the heart of God. Take a moment and just let that sink in. We're going to pause, have a break, hear from our show sponsor, just a minute.
Empowering leaders, enriching lives. That's the heart of Hire Ministry. They're dedicated to equipping Christian leaders with the tools and resources they need to thrive in their calling. Whether you're looking for leadership development, strategic planning, or community outreach strategies, Hire Ministries is here to help. Visit hireministries.com to learn more and thank them for sponsoring our podcast.
The reality of Christmas is this. It doesn't wait for us to have it all together. It doesn't need our perfect plans, our perfectly wrapped gifts, or our perfectly decorated homes. God is in the ordinary. He's in the messy. He's in the inconvenient. He's in the spaces where we feel least prepared, least capable, least worthy, and he shows up there with more power, more grace, more love, and more hope than we could ever possibly imagine. And here's something else that I want to highlight. God's approach at Christmas is counterintuitive. He doesn't come with pomp and grandeur. He doesn't come in a palace or on a throne. He doesn't overwhelm with spectacle. He comes quietly, humbly, vulnerably, a baby in a manger. That's it. That's the form he chooses. And maybe that's God's gentle reminder to us that the heart of Christmas is not about what we can control or create. It's about receiving what he gives: presence, grace, love, and hope. Some of the most profound spiritual truths in our lives happen in moments that feel small, awkward, inconvenient, messy. And Christmas is no different. The first Christmas was messy. The first Christmas was inconvenient. It was ordinary. And yet it changed the course of human history. That should give us hope. Because the same God who entered Bethlehem can enter your home, can enter your life, your heart, exactly where you are, exactly in the mess, exactly in the chaos, and exactly in the ordinary. Because if the first Christmas tells us anything, it's this: God loves the messy. He loves the ordinary. God chooses the overlooked. God meets us in the middle of life, not in the ideal, not in the perfect, not in the magical. He meets us where we are. And that's an invitation. It's an invitation to let go of unrealistic expectations, to let go of pressure, to let go of the need to perform, to let go of the fear that I don't have it together, because God shows up. He's faithful. He's present. He's powerful in the midst of the ordinary. He's transformative in the middle of our mess. So as we sit here on the porch together, reflecting on the season, I want to invite you into a simple posture of openness. Imagine yourself stepping into that stable with Mary and Joseph. Imagine yourself among the shepherds, looking up at the sky, overwhelmed by fear and awe, but noticing the presence of God in a tiny, helpless infant. Imagine yourself realizing that the Messiah came not to a palace, but to the ordinary, not to the perfect, but to the messy, not to prepared, but to the human. That's where Christmas begins. That's where hope is born. That's where joy is found. And that's where we're invited to meet God, right here, right now, exactly where we are. Take a deep breath. Let that sink in. Let the image of the messy, ordinary, vulnerable first Christmas settle into your heart. And let that prepare you for the next step, to pause, reflect, to receive God's presence in your own life, exactly where you are. Because the first Christmas was messy, inconvenient, ordinary, and holy. And ours can be too. Let's take a quick break.
Is your ministry ready to reach new heights? Hire Ministries is here to help you grow, lead, and serve with excellence. From leadership coaching to practical resources for church management, they offer everything you need to take your ministry to the next level. We're proud to have them as our sponsor. Visit hireministries.com today and see how they can help you make a greater impact.
All right, we're back. And if you're still with me up to this point, I want to say, if you're listening right now to this, maybe you're tired. Maybe you've been running at full speed for weeks, maybe for months, maybe even the entire year. And now suddenly it's the day before Christmas Eve. And instead of excitement, you feel complete exhaustion. Exhaustion that doesn't just live in your body, it's in your mind, it's in your heart, it's in your soul. You're still carrying last year's grief, last week's disappointment, last month's unanswered prayers, and here comes Christmas demanding joy, demanding magic, and demanding perfection. And maybe you just simply don't have it to give. Maybe now, sitting here a couple days before the big day, maybe you don't feel like celebrating. Maybe the carols make you ache. Maybe the lights make you feel exposed. Maybe the parties make you feel like another set of obligations that you didn't sign up for but feel compelled to attend. If that's where you are, I want to say this first and loudest. You're not failing. You're not broken. You're not unspiritual. Your tiredness, your grief, your emptiness, they don't disqualify you from Christmas. In fact, I would argue that they place you closer to the heart of it than you realize. Because as we've already talked about, Christmas doesn't require perfect energy or perfect circumstances. It doesn't require perfect families or perfect faith. It requires presence. And I don't mean presence wrapped in a box and a bow. I mean presence. Simply being present. And presence is something that you already have. So I'm going to do something weird. Whether you're sitting in a living room, whether you're driving in a car, maybe you're on a treadmill. I want you to take a deep breath with me. In and out. One more time. In and out. Just sit here for a minute. Right here on this porch with me. Because this is the kind of Christmas moment that I want to create for you. Not the kind filled with expectation or Pinterest perfect trees. Not the kind that measures joy in gifts bought or lights strung, but the kind where God meets you where you are. Some of you this morning are grieving. Maybe this is the first Christmas without someone you love. Maybe it's the second. Maybe it's the fifth. Maybe it's the 10th. Maybe the holidays still hit as hard as the day they left. And that's the case. I want you to know that God sees you. God sees your pain. God sees your longing for what once was. And he's not distant. He doesn't pass judgment on your tears. He's not confused by your sadness. He is present right here in the middle of it. Some of you are lonely. Maybe your family isn't near. Maybe your family is difficult. Maybe the memory of family feels like a window that was closed long ago. And this time of year just slams it shut. Maybe social media doesn't help because everywhere you look, everyone is celebrating the perfect Christmas. They're all smiling, they're all laughing, they're all decorating, they're all smiling some more. I want to tell you something critical. You're not forgotten. You're not invisible. And you don't need to manufacture joy to meet God. Let's go back to those shepherds again. These were ordinary, overlooked people out in the fields doing the work that no one noticed. Certainly no one celebrated it. And the angel shows up and says, "Fear not. I bring good news of great joy for all people." Notice that. For all people. Not just the ones with the perfectly decorated homes or the Instagram-worthy living rooms. Not the ones with the perfect faith, not the ones who have it all together. All people. Even the tired, even the lonely, even the overwhelmed, and yes, even you. You may feel small, you may feel forgotten, but the message of Christmas is loud and clear. God sees you. And more than that, he comes to you. Some of you are burned out. Maybe you've been giving and serving and leading and planning all year. Maybe you've been the one holding everyone else together, making sure the lights go up, the meals are cooked, the gifts are purchased, the school concerts are attended, and now it's Christmas Eve and you're running on empty. You're not alone. I want you to hear this as clearly as I can. You do not have to do it all. God doesn't measure your faith by the number of Christmas cards you send or the gifts that you wrap. God doesn't evaluate your devotion by the cleanliness of your house or the perfection of your cookies. Presence matters more than performance. Faithfulness matters more than perfection. Sometimes the most faithful thing that you can do is to slow down, to breathe, to acknowledge that you're tired and still open your heart to him. Let's talk for a minute about grace. Because so often this is the season where we forget what grace looks like. Grace isn't warm, cozy. It's not a feeling that comes when everything goes according to plan. Grace isn't a reward for good behavior. Grace is not dependent on your energy or your mood. Grace is God showing up right where you are, right in the mess, in the chaos, in the hurt, in the exhaustion. Grace looks like the angel appearing to the shepherds on a dark night. Grace looks like Mary holding a baby in a stable, exhausted and overwhelmed. Grace looks like a weary parent hearing their child laugh in the middle of a chaotic morning. Grace looks like God whispering, "I see you. I'm here. And I won't leave you." And here's the beautiful thing. Grace is contagious. Even when we're tired. Even when we feel depleted. Even when we think we have nothing left to give, God can work through us. Our presence, our attention, our small acts of love, they ripple outward. They bless people we may never know, and sometimes even bless ourselves in ways that we never expected. I want to pause for just a moment and speak directly to parents. This is a hard season. Kids are excited, and their excitement can feel exhausting. There are cookies to bake, plays to attend, decorations to hang, traditions to maintain, and maybe in the midst of all that, you feel like you're failing. Let me tell you the truth. I've seen this play out over and over and over again. Your kids don't need the perfect Christmas. They need you. They need your presence, your attention, your listening ear, your hand to hold, your knee to sit on, your voice reading the story, even if your throat is sore, your patience when everything goes wrong, and it will. They remember the moments when you show up, not the ones when everything looked Instagram perfect. They remember the laughter, the shared wonder, the quiet prayers, the stories told over hot chocolate. These are the holy moments. These are the moments that shape a lifetime. Now, I know that some of you listening right now are grieving, lonely, exhausted, and overwhelmed all at once. And if that's you, I want to invite you into this moment right now. I want you to picture a quiet room, a candle flickering on the table, a Bible open in front of you. Maybe no one else is around. Maybe it's just you. And you say a simple prayer. Jesus, I'm tired. I'm hurting. I don't know what to do, but I want you here. I want to see you. I want to feel you. And here's what happens. He comes. He always comes. Because the first Christmas didn't happen in a palace. It didn't happen in perfect comfort. It happened in a stable, among animals, among strangers, among people who were just doing life. And yet in that mess, the world changed. The Savior arrived. And the same is true for you. Your room may not be perfect. Your house may not be decorated the way you imagined. Your family may not be cooperating. Your circumstances may be messy. And yet Christ can still show up. He can still bring peace, hope, joy, and love right there in the middle of your life, exactly where you are. So as this Christmas season comes to an end, I want to leave you with a few practical thoughts. Give yourself permission to rest. Stop trying to do it all. Stop trying to manufacture feelings that you don't have. Rest, sit, breathe, and let God meet you there. Focus on presence over performance. One moment of authentic connection, reading a story, sharing a laugh, holding a hand is worth far more than 10 perfectly executed traditions. Why not invite God into the ordinary? Into the dishes, into the car ride, into the laundry, the quiet evenings. These are the places that he shows up, so look for him in the small things. Lean into community. Call a friend, text someone, share your struggles, listen to someone else. Even a short conversation can be holy. And finally, celebrate the small victories. One candle lit, one verse read, one moment of laughter. Remember that it's about presence, God's presence, meeting us exactly where we are, and our presence showing up even when we're exhausted, even when we're broken, and even when we're tired of trying. Take a deep breath with me again. In and out. One more. In and out. And hear this truth. Christmas doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty. It requires openness. It requires presence. So as we move into the final stretch of this episode and the final stretch of the Christmas season, I want to leave you with this. Christmas doesn't end with a feeling. It ends with a person. Jesus isn't intimidated by your exhaustion. He's not unsettled by your questions, and he's not distant from your grief. He still comes near. So if your Christmas this year feels smaller, slower, quieter, maybe that's not a failure. It might be an invitation to slow the pace, to lower the noise, to open the door. Because the Savior of the world still comes the way that he always has, quietly, humbly, faithfully. And he still comes close. If this episode met you where you are, I want to encourage you to share it with someone who needs permission to breathe this season. Join the conversation with us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the Pulpit and Porch podcast wherever you listen. And remember, there's always a seat for you here. Pull up a chair on the porch. Merry Christmas, friends. We'll talk soon.